headlines. Washington's possible deployment of its missile defense system in South Korea is expected to hijack the first foreign ministers' meeting in 3 years between South Korea, China, and Japan this weekend. The Korean government announces a 10 trillion won stimulus and investment package to pick up the pace in the country's economic recovery. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says the United States Fed's dovish stance actually increases uncertainty for Korea's policymakers. Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News. Happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I am Kang Chery. We begin with another hint that the United States might be mulling over deploying its missile defense system called THAAD to South Korea. The word out of Washington is that the top U.S. military general in South Korea has called for a layered missile defense capability in the South. Kim Hyun-bin has our top story.
The commander of U.S. Forces Korea is calling on Seoul and Washington to implement a layered ballistic missile defense capability, and another strong signal that the U.S. is keen to deploy the THAAD system to the Korean peninsula. In a written testimony to the U.S. House Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense on Thursday, General Curtis Scaparrotti stressed the need for a ballistic missile defense capability in South Korea due to the threat posed by North Korea. On the same day, an official from the U.S. Defense Department said Washington is prepared to hold official talks with Seoul about the possible deployment of THAAD, as there have been no formal consultations thus far. The ongoing speculation about the possible deployment of THAAD to South Korea has stirred controversy inside and outside of Korea. China and Russia are deeply opposed to THAAD being on their regional doorstep, saying it would infringe upon their national security. On the other hand, its supporters say THAAD will counter North Korea's increasing ballistic and missile threats. The U.S. also believes the threat posed by North Korea has become even more acute. Scaparrotti says that Pyongyang has the ability to produce a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can be mounted on top of a ballistic missile. North Korea has conducted 3 nuclear bomb tests, the first in 2006, the second in 2009, and the most recent coming in February 2013. Experts predict the potential fourth testing will be to test a miniaturized warhead. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
And the possible deployment of THAAD is widely expected to hijack the first foreign ministers' meeting in 3 years between South Korea, China, and Japan this weekend. Our Hwang Sung-hee has a preview.
When the top diplomats from Korea, China, and Japan meet on Saturday, they'll discuss ways to restore trilateral cooperation amid strained relations. Tangled in territorial and historical disputes, the talks in Seoul are the first such meeting since 2012. Korea, as the current rotating chair, has been pushing for a gathering of the top diplomats since late last year. But Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi may have another agenda in mind.
Since the visit to Korea by Chinese Defense Minister Chung Won-chun, China has been very vocal about its position on THAAD. It is highly likely that the issue will be brought up again.
Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will hold separate meetings with the visiting diplomats ahead of the trilateral talks, giving the Chinese minister an opportunity to reiterate Beijing's concerns. On Monday, a senior Chinese diplomat called on Korea to consider Beijing's concerns before deploying the U.S. missile defense system. Seoul says its decision will be based on national interest. There are also questions about whether Korea and Japan will make progress on the issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women, especially since this is Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida's first trip to Seoul since taking office in 2012. The visiting ministers are also scheduled to meet with President Park Geun-hye ahead of the trilateral meeting. While Seoul and Tokyo have expressed hopes that Saturday's talks will lead to a trilateral summit, experts say that Beijing will likely remain cautious and make sure that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe apologizes for Japan's wartime atrocities before setting a date. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
South Korea is warming up to the idea of raising wages for North Korean workers at the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Friday that it's willing to increase wages within the 5% range in line with the labor regulations for this complex. Last month, Pyongyang unilaterally decided to hike the minimum wage by more than 5% to $74 per month starting in March. March payments will be given out from April 10th. The Korean government has announced a set of supplementary stimulus measures today, totaling 10 trillion won, which is roughly about $9 billion. With the country's lending rate at an all-time low, Seoul is aiming to carry out its expansionary policies to spur both consumption and investments. Our Choi Yoo-sun explains.
With concerns of deflation on the rise, the government says it will spend an additional 3 trillion won, or $2.5 billion in the first half of this year to speed up economic recovery. At an economy ministers' meeting, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan laid out Seoul's plan to use 2 trillion won from the budget before the end of June and to inject another 1 trillion won, or close to $1 billion, by pulling funds from its $40 billion stimulus package. The minister also talked about expanding public and private sector investments by $6 billion this year. Friday's measures come just 3 months after the government's stimulus package amid prolonged weak consumption and an unsteady rise in corporate investments. Growth in consumer prices stayed in the 0% range for a third straight month in February, and businesses cut down more than 7% of facility investments in January.
We need to do more to revitalize the economy to supplement the lack of effective demand.
Analysts say the government's expansionary measures, coupled with the central bank's record low interest rate, could improve consumer and corporate sentiments. The finance minister also raised concerns about the rising unemployment rate among Korea's young people, which jumped to 11% last month. Che added the government, along with the country's labor and management, must compromise on structural reforms.
The tripartite commission must reach a high-level agreement by the end of March with an aim to assist the country's young job seekers.
Following up on President Park's recent Middle East tour, the minister asked officials to create a plan by the end of June to support young people find work in overseas healthcare, IT, and cultural sectors. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
Following the United States Federal Reserve's monetary meeting this week, the Bank of Korea chief says external economic uncertainties may have grown. But he did add that because the Fed seems to be planning on raising the rate gradually, the spillover effects will be limited. Our Sun Se-min reports.
Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says that the pace of the rate increase by the U.S. Federal Reserve is more crucial than when it starts. During a meeting with local commercial bankers on Friday, the governor said that although the timing of the rate hike is important, he said more attention will be on the pace of the increase, as it will continue to rise once it starts. The top central banker's comment follows the Fed's latest indication that it's open to a possible interest rate rise on the back of improving jobs growth, moving it a step closer to increasing the rate for the first time in 9 years. Regarding this, the central banker said economic uncertainty in Korea still exists, adding that it is difficult to predict when the Fed will begin to raise its rates. The BOK last week cut the country's interest rate to a historic low of 1.75% to help boost the sluggish Korean economy. Some experts in Korea believe the country will maintain its key expansionary policy for now because tightening moves like a rate increase by the Fed also indicate possible changes in the global financial market. A U.S. rate hike could trigger a major capital outflow from Korea, as investment already made in developing economies could flow into the U.S. market, eventually forcing the BOK to raise the rate. Experts here say that major economies like Europe and Japan, with their continued monetary easing measures, should work as a buffer for the Korean economy, even if a sizable amount of money makes its way to the U.S. Sun Se-min, ARIRANG News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, Join Kang Chery for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
UN Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to persuade. The bodies from a fatal helicopter crash last week have been found. The chopper is believed to have crashed into the sea because of bad weather conditions and low visibility, but the exact cause is still under investigation. Our Connie Kim reports.
The bodies of the two missing pilots from last week's helicopter crash have been found in waters off Korea's southwestern coast. The Coast Guard confirmed on Friday that the bodies are those of the captains of the ill-fated chopper. The Coast Guard helicopter carrying 4 people crashed in waters off Kagodo Island last Friday while trying to land near a seawall. 1 person is still missing. The helicopter was on a mission to transport an emergency patient to an inland hospital. This is the same helicopter that was the first to arrive at the Seoul ferry accident last April, saving 12 people. Korea's Coast Guard and Navy were immediately dispatched to the site, but strong waves and heavy fog have been hampering rescue operations for days. Due to the unfavorable weather conditions, it took rescue teams 6 days to find the fuselage using an underwater camera. Salvage teams recovered the fuselage roughly a kilometer from the port. However, it's making it difficult for officials to find out what happened in the moments before the accident because the helicopter didn't have a black box. Authorities say the pilots may have been caught out by a lack of visibility amid foggy conditions. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
In these times of slowing growth and low inflation, some of the developed economies are raising salaries as that could boost consumption and lead growth. But is Seoul taking steps to follow suit? Our Song Ji-sun says not quite yet.
Korea's minimum wage stands at just below $5 per hour. That translates to a monthly income of only about $8,000, far below the salary needed to meet the minimum cost of living for a family of 4 at $1,500. In the Eurozone, Germany and the UK have moved to raise their minimum wage this year, and the minimum wage in many European countries is already double that of Seoul. In the US and Japan, large companies are raising salaries to stimulate consumption. Last month, Walmart announced that it will raise its hourly pay to $9 per hour, and Japanese automakers like Nissan, Toyota, and Honda have raised their base monthly salaries by $30 to $40 following a pickup in sales from the weekend. But that trend hasn't reached Seoul yet. Samsung Electronics, for example, has frozen salaries after a disappointing performance last year. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan is calling on business leaders to raise salaries, but they claim wage hikes would weaken their price competitiveness, as many Korean companies rely heavily on exports. Experts suggest a wage hike could benefit the labor market, along with improved domestic sentiment.
A wage hike could help boost salaries at the bottom of the bracket and could also encourage job creation. There should be room for drawing the extra funds from the cash reserves many conglomerates have accumulated so far.
Although the government has scaled back, saying wage negotiation is a matter to be discussed between management and labor, a stronger push is needed from the government to convince large companies to initiate the move. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
Apple took the #1 ranking in the Asian smartphone market in the fourth quarter of last year. Apple's market share in Asia was at 16%, 3% higher than Samsung Electronics, according to a technology market research organization, Counterpoint. Korea, Japan, and China led demand for Apple's flagship iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus models. Third and fourth rankings went to Chinese smartphone makers Xiaomi and Huawei. Apple's market share also took the lead in North America as well, but emerging markets in South America, the Middle East, and Africa showed a stronger preference toward Samsung for its price competitiveness. As with most tech gadgets, surveillance cameras are becoming smarter. They used to simply record what's happening, but now some of them can even prevent accidents and even catch intruders. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the story.
An employee starts to walk around with no safety mask or safety gear on. The potentially hazardous situation is detected by a state-of-the-art camera and instantly relayed to a safety administrator. This Smart Video Management System, or SVMS, developed by Samsung S1, has the ability to preemptively detect dangerous situations.
We film a site for a month and find a pattern to determine unsafe conditions based on the camera's 14 algorithms. There are 6 more categories for various industries. The system can detect and send warning signs to the administrators, allowing a swift response.
The SVMS uses a facial recognition program for intruders or to locate a particular person in a designated area. By calculating the speed and angle of movements, the system can detect violent acts or someone has lost consciousness. It can also figure out if barrels containing hazardous material are in danger of tipping over by calculating their angle. This system changes the dynamics of CCTVs, merely used for recording stuff that has already happened. It's also a major improvement as it cuts down on human error. Previously, an administrator had to monitor multiple screens at all times, and the success rate of detecting an accident drops by around half if a person monitors multiple screens for more than 10 minutes. The rate drops even more drastically after just 20 minutes. Due to this, the government is investing $6.3 million over the next 5 years on these smart surveillance systems. And to address concerns about privacy, security companies have come up with features to protect identities of those caught on camera. Samsung S1 blurs the faces when they're filming and reveals them only when they're legally required to do so. There are an estimated 2.7 million CCTV cameras currently installed in Korea, including those managed by government agencies and those owned by individuals. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
The Islamic State militant group has claimed its responsibility for Wednesday's massacre at Tunisia's National Museum. To tell us more about this story and more, Paul Lee is joining us from the news center. Paul, more than 20 people were killed in this shocking attack. How is the Islamic State militant group allegedly linking itself to this violence?
Well, in an audio message posted online Thursday, the extremist group reportedly claimed responsibility for the targeted shooting and even warned it's only the start of more attacks. Now, that being said, some security analysts in the region are skeptical and wonder if IS is taking credit for the work of a sympathizer. Ariang's Kwan So-ah has more.
The first drop of rain is how the Islamic State extremist group described Wednesday's attack on a museum in Tunisia. Claiming responsibility in an audio recording posted on Twitter, the terror group praised the 2 attackers killed in the mission, calling them Knights of the Islamic State. The group, however, offered no proof that it was behind the attack. In their ongoing investigations, police have made 9 arrests. 4 suspects are said to be directly linked to the gunmen. The remaining 5 are alleged to be part of a terrorist cell. Officials say the terrorists chose Bardo Museum as its proud symbol of Tunisia's historical identity.
They chose Bardo Museum, and this is not a coincidence. Bardo Museum is a place of memory, and they hate these memories. Bardo Museum is a place for history, and they hate history.
The overall death toll rose to 25 on Thursday, including 20 foreign tourists from several nations, a police officer, and the 2 gunmen who were shot dead by security forces. Nearly 50 others were hurt. But Tunisia's security services have been praised for their quick response, as the gunmen had explosives which they failed to detonate.
Surveillance will be intensified on all tourist zones in the country to avoid any other incidents like the one yesterday. It will involve all the national territory.
The attack is the deadliest to have hit Tunisia in more than a decade. The country is concerned about the impact this attack could have on its young democracy and its tourism industry, of which its economy is heavily dependent. Kwan So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And in other news, President Barack Obama has sent a message to the people of Iran, calling on them to seize what he called the best chance in decades to improve ties with the United States. Some would say a bold move for Obama. What else did he include in this message?
Well, Obama also focused on the Iranian nuclear talks. In the video, he called both nations had an historic opportunity to resolve the issue peacefully and that it could pave the way for a, quote, different relationship. Let's take a look.
My message to you, the people of Iran, is that together we have to speak up for the future we seek. As I've said many times before, I believe that our countries should be able to resolve this issue peacefully with diplomacy.
Obama sent the goodwill message on Thursday to mark celebrations of the Iranian New Year. He also called on Iran's leaders to choose a path of reopening trade and investment with the rest of the world, rather than keep the country under the heavy weight of sanctions. The remarks come at a critical juncture as Iran and 6 world powers are aiming to reach a final deal on Tehran's nuclear development by the end of June.
And shifting now to Australia, it's been 3 months since 3 people were killed during a siege at a cafe in Sydney. And this cafe's doors have reopened to the public as the country is trying to move forward from this terror attack, move on from all this. What was it like at the scene on day 1 of reopen?
Well, many residents who attended the reopening on this Friday morning said there was an incredible sense of solidarity. Hundreds lined around the block to pay their respects to the victims and show support in the center of the city's business district. The Premier of New South Wales, Mike Barrett, said it was an important day for the people of Australia.
That is our thoughts and prayers remain with the victims' families and friends. This is a tough day for them, as every day is tough. But we continue to mourn with them, and together with all of those who are injured, our thoughts remain with them as well. It's also an important day for this city because actions that came to cause hate and division actually brought peace and unity.
The Lindt Chocolate Cafe displays commemorative plaques for the 34-year-old manager and 38-year-old mother of 3 who were killed in the final moments. The December incident has since prompted the Australian government to review stricter immigration and anti-terror laws.
And finally, the online retail giant Amazon has got the green light from the government to start testing its delivery drones. Paul, Amazon first talked about using drone deliveries back in 2013. Where are we now?
Well, Amazon hit a big milestone on Thursday when it won approval from U.S. federal regulators. Many skeptics thought this project was a mere PR stunt, but it looks like Amazon is moving full steam ahead with its vision of a fleet of robotic drones delivering packages to your front door. The Federal Aviation Administration said it will allow the company to test drone prototypes over Washington state, but only in flight paths that will have limited private rural areas. The small unmanned aircraft will be able to fly up to 80 kilometers per hour. Its design specs show they'll even be able to operate autonomously by sensing and avoiding objects. The ambitious service, however, is still raising public concerns over safety and privacy. Charity?
Of course. All right, Paul, thank you so much for those stories, and we will see you again in just about 2 hours.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. It was another warm day with the mercury rising to the 20s in most regions, but unfortunately, high levels of microdust also rose and levels reached the bad range, mostly in the central regions, including Seoul. At the moment, as you can see, it is partly cloudy skies nationwide, and aside from the air quality issue, tomorrow is shaping up to be another wonderful spring-like day. Seoul should start off the morning at 6, Busan at 10, and the daytime high here in Seoul and Busan Busan should reach up to 19, and that should hit 17 over in Jeju. Enjoy the weather while you can, because it looks like numbers will take a dip starting Sunday evening, so morning lows in some regions may dip below zero next week. On to Saturday's readings. Seoul and Busan should reach a high of 19, Daegu and Gwangju the 20s. Meanwhile, Jeju peaks at 17, Dokdo 12, Mount Kumgang hits 8. Those are the updates we're following on this Friday evening. Here's a look at the international weather.
And that does it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.